Hello, everyone. We'll get started. Thank you for joining the third session out of 6 webinars to present to you a number of thematic agenda items scheduled for discussion at the upcoming 28th session of the CBD subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice, or SBSTTA. As you'll see on this slide, we have 6 sessions scheduled for this week. We have marine and coastal biodiversity that took place on Monday, IBBES and presenting the business and biodiversity assessment that took place yesterday. Today is our session on synthetic biology. Tomorrow will be our session on planning, monitoring, reporting, and review. Friday will be our session on the program of work on protected areas. And on Monday, we have our final session on sustainable wildlife management. These sessions are provided to you by the Co-op for CBD project, which aims to facilitate technical and scientific cooperation for decisions under the CBD to be informed by the best available knowledge and advice towards the achievement of the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. Today's session will focus on synthetic biology, presented to you by Hendrik Siggers. Hendrik has a PhD in zoology from the University of Ghent, Belgium, and is a taxonomist by training and science policy expert by experience. He's the coordinator of the Biodiversity Policy Support Group of the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences, which includes a team working on capacity building for the CHM of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Presently, he serves as Belgian national focal point to the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice of the Convention on Biological Diversity since 2010, and represented the WIOG in the Bureau of the SBSTTA from 2016 to 2018. He also served as Belgian national focal point to the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, or IBBES, which you may already know, from 2013 to 2014, after which he coordinated the Belgian national focal point to the CBD until 2025. Presently, he's involved in the agreement on marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction under UN clause, focusing on agenda items related to marine genetic resources. Hendrik has been dealing with synthetic biology under the CBD since 2016 as Belgian and occasionally EU lead expert. He will be presenting the agenda item on synthetic biology, for which the CBD Secretariat has published document CBD/SBSTTA-28/4/add1. The draft recommendation, I believe, has yet to be published by the Secretariat, but Hendrik, please correct me if I'm mistaken. And before I hand it over to Hendrik, I'll just go over a few ground rules for this session. So the thematic presentation will last 30 minutes and will be followed by a 30-minute Q&A to allow for discussion with the speaker. Please keep your microphones shut when you're not speaking and raise your hand if you have any questions for the speaker. When you do speak for the first time, please introduce yourself. And this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be made available on the Co-op for CBD website unless you object to this, and we will ensure that your objection will be taken into account. And the PowerPoint presentations will be posted on the Co-op for CBD website as well. Finally, we have an expert database, which you're free to join if you'd like to by using the QR code on this page, and I'll give you maybe just a second to scan the code, if you wish to, of course. Okay, I think we're good. And Hendrik, please go ahead. I'll stop sharing my screen and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Camille, and good afternoon to everybody who's in the same time zone as I am. Otherwise, good morning, good evening, or good night. Now, I will now start sharing my screen, and we can start with the presentation. And if all goes well, you should now be seeing my screen. If somebody can, yes, that looks okay.
I can confirm.
Perfect, thank you very much. So in this session, I will try to introduce to you what is going on synthetic biology under the Convention of Biological Diversity. Now, under the Convention of Biological Diversity is a little bit of stretch because the issue between brackets is not really an issue under the CBD. We'll come back on that. The issue started during a meeting of the subsidiary body on scientific, technical and technological affairs in 2010 in Nairobi, during which meeting a paper was published in the journal Science, publishing the first self-replicating cell with an entirely synthetic man-made genome. So timing is everything, and that's how the issue of synthetic biology got on the agenda of the SBSTTA. That recommendation from SBSTTA made it to COP10 under the agenda item of new and emerging issues, where the application of the precautionary approach was cautioned when it comes to a release of genetically modified organisms using synthetic biology. And the previous COP, the following COP, COP11 in Hyderabad, again, there was an issue on new and emerging issues. And there were noted the need to consider the potential positive and negative effects of components, organisms, and products resulting from synthetic biology techniques on the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. Next COP, COP12, 2014 in South Korea, again under the issue of new and emerging issues. Here, a coordinating approach between the CBD and the protocols was decided, and a first ad hoc technical expert group and an open-ended online forum dealing with the issue was being established. Now, in the SBSTTA, in the intersessional period, the SBSTTA 20 in Montreal, synthetic biology was treated, and there we saw the issue of digital sequence information enter the discussions of CBD under the agenda item of synthetic biology. Now, as you all know, digital sequence information from that point on budded into something completely different and has started to live a life on its own in the Convention on Biological Diversity. During COP13 in Cancun, the COP acknowledged the ARTEC's operational definition of synthetic biology as a starting point for deliberations under the CBD and its protocols. Quite important to note is that we don't have a fully accepted definition of synthetic biology. There's only an operational definition as a starting point for deliberations. And this COP13 gave the mandate to the ARTEC and the open-ended forum to work further. And here we saw the enter into the discussions of the gene drives. COP14 agreed that a broad and regular horizon scanning, monitoring, and assessing of the most recent technological developments was needed, and the mandate of the ARTEC with renewed membership and the open-ended forum was again extended. Now, in the next COP, COP15 in Montreal, there was quite some substantial decisions being made. The first and foremost is that there was a decision not to make a decision on what is synthetic biology as a new and emerging issue. So synthetic biology is actually not a full agenda item under the Convention on Biological Diversity. There was no conclusion. And it is not an agenda item. Also, it clearly stated that the decision was not a precedent regarding synthetic biology as a permanent item under the convention or on any future work or process, including horizon scanning. Now, in contrast to that paragraph, in one of the next paragraph, the same COP decided to establish a process for broad and regular horizon scanning, which seems a little bit contradictory to the previous paragraph, of the most recent technological developments in synthetic biology, and agreed to start its work for one intersessional period. Hence, the work is not a permanent activity and not a permanent agenda item of the Convention on Biological Diversity. It also established a multidisciplinary ad hoc technical expert group to support the process for broad and regular horizon scanning, monitoring, and assessment. And in the last COP in Cali in 2024, COP decided to develop a thematic action plan to support capacity building and development, access to and transfer of technology and knowledge sharing in the context of synthetic biology, and invites everyone to submit information on their experiences, needs, and priorities in this regard. It further established a new ad hoc technical expert group on synthetic biology, knowing that the open-ended online forum remains operational, and invites all to submit information on their priority areas in relation to synthetic biology, and further request the Executive Secretary of the Convention to commission an independent scientific study on synthetic biology applications that are relevant and to synthesize the information shared. And it requested the SBSTTA-28, which is the one we are going towards at this point, to consider the draft thematic action plan and the outcomes of the work of the ARTEC, and request the SBI, subsidiary body on implementation, to review the implementation aspects of the thematic action plan. And this is where we are now. Now, what happened in the intersessional period? Well, sorry, what quite important is that the terms of reference of the ARTEC are quite clear. It is to review and synthesize the compilations which we just talked about, to identify current and potential benefits of synthetic biology for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, identify potential positive impacts of the most recent technological developments, and also to identify the potential negative impacts of the most recent technological developments in synthetic biology. And then, in reference to the capacity building action plan, to provide advice on how capacity building and development and so forth can be taken into account with respect to the draft thematic action plan. Now, in the intersessional period, there's a lot of things that have happened. First and foremost, the draft thematic action plan to support the capacity building and development, access to and transfer of technology and knowledge sharing in the context of synthetic biology has been posted on the CBD website. The document is cbd/substas28/4 and cbd/sbi/7/8 knowing that the draft thematic action plan will have to be considered by both subsidiary bodies. This document contains of a note by the Secretariat and an annex. The annex contains a lot of elements, a lot of introductory elements, a lot of, let us say, methodology elements, approaches, and what have you. Also links to means of implementation, a role of the Secretariat, monitoring, reporting on progress on the implementation, and then, which is probably the most important part, the enclosure. Now, as I already said, the SBSTA will have to consider the draft thematic action plan, and the SBI would have to review the implementation aspects. Now, one of the difficulties that we will be having to look at is how do we separate the implementation aspects, which has to be considered by the subsidiary body in implementation, from the rest of the thematic action plan, which is not entirely clear until quite recently, to be honest. And the second element, if you look further at this enclosure, which I think is the most relevant part and the one that will be considered in most detail, is titled, it's named Draft Action Plan. And my question mark here at the end is, does this consist of the draft action plan? I'm going too fast here. Interestingly, there are 3 outcome areas in this draft thematic action plan. One on strengthening capacity for research and development, one to improve access to and transfer of technology, and then a third to enhance knowledge sharing on synthetic biology, including its development, assessment, governance, and regulation. Now, if you look at the objectives, these objectives is first, on the first outcome area, actors have improved capacity to undertake research and development. Now, one of the things is that the actors of all these outcome areas and actions that are being listed here are only defined in a footnote as national governments, indigenous peoples and local communities, women, youth, academia, research institutions, the business sector, civil society, and other relevant organizations, which is of course very complete, but doesn't really give a lot of guidance on who has to do what. So there will probably be some discussion on this. And if we look at the text, if we see who is being referred to, mostly we see this being referred to as any or all actors. So this doesn't really give a lot of guidance. Again, now on the improved access to transfer to technology, here the objective is to ensure access to synthetic biology technology that is relevant to the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity and does not result in significant damage to the environment. And the third objective, in line with the third outcome area, is to make the knowledge relevant to synthetic biology shared widely, made available for use by all actors for research and development in the assessment, governance, and regulation of synthetic biology. So this is quite wide-ranging. If you look at all the actions, there are quite a lot of interesting actions. It's a wide range of actions identified. I don't think it is important to go through everything. That would lead us a bit far in this introduction, but the indication of relevant actors will probably need to be to receive some attention. My feeling is that it is especially the enclosure that will be considered in more detail in SBSTA. If we look further, the second element of what is on the table for the SBSTA is what is the work of the ARTEC, is the further work of the ARTEC on the evaluation of the potential effects of synthetic biology and widely speaking. Now, a very interesting work or a very interesting document is the Executive Secretary's Consideration on Synthetic Biology, for which you see there the code, and that is based on the synthesis of submissions on synthetic biology, the summary of the discussions of the open-ended forum on synthetic biology, and the independent scientific study on synthetic biology. This document contains two annexes, so one on the potential benefits of synthetic biology in relation to the coming GBF, which is a direct response to a request from COP, and then the Annex 2, most recent technological developments and their potential impacts in relation to the KM-GBF, which is a very good work, to be honest. And based on that paper and the ones on which the paper was based, have been considered by the ARTEC, which already has issued its report, which again you can find in the link and the under the code indicated there. It contains a number of annexes, conclusions of the ARTEC, a list of current benefits of synthetic biology in relation to the targets of the KM-GBF, and then a third annex with the potential benefits of synthetic biology in relation to the targets of the GBF. Annex 4 with selected information related to the potential positive and potential negative impact of the most recent technological developments in synthetic biology. Now, quite interestingly, the third annex only lists the potential benefits of synthetic biology. Annex 4 only deals with one of 5 priority areas that were listed in the Executive Secretary's considerations on synthetic biology. And that subject is artificial intelligence and computational biology, which was one of the most controversial or discussed issue or subjects during COP16. The fact that there is no annex on potential negative effects of synthetic biology in relation to the targets of the KM-GBF is something which may be seen by some as a hiatus. Now, fortunately for us, the draft recommendations for the COP have already, the pre-session document with the draft recommendations for the COP has already been issued. And from that, I have made a bit of a selection without going too much into the preambulars, which we hope will not be discussed too deeply or negotiated too much at SBSTA. Now, the first is it welcomes the outcomes of the meeting of the ARTEC. It's a very standard phrase, which we normally will we will have to acknowledge the outcome of the meeting of the ARTEC. The draft recommendations suggest welcoming, knowing that this sort of wording is occasionally heavily debated at SBSTA. Second paragraph is adopts the thematic action plan, which as contained in the annex to the decision. Again, this will probably have to go to COP bracketed, because of course you cannot adopt something which is not yet approved or accepted by the COP. Then there's two preambular paragraphs, which I'm not going to go into. Paragraph 5 gives a lot of information, but then decides that work should continue on the following specific areas of technological development, and those are the 5 priority areas that were in the Executive Secretary note on synthetic biology, of which only artificial intelligence and computational biology have been dealt with the ARTEC. I expect quite a bit of discussion on this. These are 5 priority areas. I am quite sure that some parties will have others and will want to replace or add or delete some of those areas. We will probably have some work on that. And then paragraph 6 decides to establish a new ARTEC in accordance with the terms of reference contained in Annex 2. So that also the new terms of reference will have to be looked at. Question is whether all parties will want to establish a new ARTEC. Then, further on the draft recommendations for COP, it invites parties and the usual suspects, if I dare say, to submit information on the areas of technological development listed in the paragraph 5 and any other relevant areas. Decides to convene to convene new discussions over the open-ended online forum. So the open-ended online forum is continued, and indeed the open-ended online forum has been proven to be very useful in the past. And then, very important as well, in the light of the thematic action plan and capacity building, encourages parties, other governments and relevant organizations to facilitate capacity building and development in the field of synthetic biology. So encourages parties and others to actually implement the capacity building and development of the thematic action plan. Now, if we go further, it also requests the Executive Secretary, subject to the availability of resources, to do a number of things, which are actually, I'm not going into detail because these are the regular standard phrasing to continue the work in the intersessional period. Now, if we look at the annex, the terms of reference, and again, I will focus on the operational elements without going into the standard elements that are recurrent. So the ARTEC will have to assess the 5 areas of technological development, so the 5 priority areas, and any other areas that have been identified by the process of submission of information by parties and others, and then again provide recommendations on ways to address the areas of technological development as necessary. Experience tells us that negotiations of these terms of reference may take quite a bit of time. And with that, I am ending the run through of the synthetic biology pre-session document and history in the context of the Convention of Biological Diversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hendrik. It's incredible to get all this information in one place and be able to have an overview of where we stand on this agenda item. I think I'm hoping people will have questions for you. If not, I have plenty. So I'll just open the floor to any questions to Hendrik on this presentation. And don't be shy. You can feel free to ask your questions in the chat and I can read them out loud for you if that's more comfortable. So I don't see any hands raised at this point. Maybe I'll start with a couple questions on my end. So you mentioned the potential new take on synthetic biology, and I wonder if maybe you could explain to us what would be some of the pros and cons of doing that, and what is at stake in terms of doing that. I'm assuming it's the continuation of the work, but I would be interested to hear what are the pros and cons on this topic, please.
Yeah. Well, the Arctic is actually uh, the how would I say this? Um, if you look at the decision of COP15, that there is, sorry, I have to go back a little bit. Yeah, you have the paragraph 4 of COP15 decision that establishes a process for broad and regular horizon scanning, monitoring and assessment that was started only for one intersessional period in 2022. Now, that process responds to the very clear observation that synthetic biology is a field that develops extremely fast and is in continuous development. So, knowing that, the COP in its wisdom decided that it would make sense to have some sort of a follow-up process that keeps on looking at what is being done in synthetic biology and especially focus on any new issues that are impossible to predict at a COP, knowing that synthetic biology and scientific research goes in unpredictable ways. And that's how it should be, of course. Now, this Arctic, which is being presented here, is one that is supposed to look at the 5 priority areas that already have been identified as things that can be promising or can be can pose threats to the goals of the convention. So it would make sense to have a look at them in more detail. And some of those are quite, uh, how would I say, they're very high in the picture nowadays, especially the artificial intelligence and computational biology is something we hear about a lot. It is extremely promising from a scientific and societal view, but it also, as it is a very powerful set of techniques. Powerful means promising, but also potentially dangerous. And so it might be interesting to have a look at those. And the others are actually also quite interesting. So it would make sense to have another Arctic to consider these developments in more detail and to present their findings to the Conference of the Parties.
Thank you. That's very helpful to understand the landscape, or at least understand what's at stake for this specific topic. I wonder also if you expect or if you anticipate that there might be a contact group dedicated to this agenda item at SBSTA, or if it's hard to tell at this point, based on
Um,
experience, I would say.
Based on experience, the establishment of a new RTEC with terms of reference tends to take quite a bit of negotiation time. So yes, I think there will be a contact group on that. Seen that the terms of reference of the RTEC as they are presented in the precession documents are quite straightforward, that might only need one contact group, but the discussion on the 5 priority areas to be dealt with, which is in the draft recommendation itself, may take also quite a lot of time. So yes, there will probably be a contact group.
Great. I think that's great to know for people to also prepare for SBSTA. Now that I've asked a couple questions, I wonder if anyone else in the room would like to ask a question to Hendrik.
There is one additional element that I would like to mention. That is
Please.
that also the pre-session document for the SBI has been issued day before yesterday. And that allows some clarity on this division of the work of the different SBs on the thematic action plan. So by looking at the pre-session document for the subsidiary body and implementation, it looks to me that the whole enclosure will have to be dealt with by Substa, whereas a number of very specific implementation-related draft recommendations will be dealt with SBI. So the issue of which is which is more or less solved by that, unless, of course, some parties have objections or thoughts about that.
Interesting, thank you. That was also something I was wondering about, how everything would articulate between SBI and Substa. And on the topic of AI and computational biology, I wonder if you know of any other international arenas that have been discussing this to a certain extent, and whether discussions in other fora might impact discussions here at the CBD on this particular topic, which you have mentioned as an especially important, or topic that has been getting a lot of attention lately. As we know, AI has been discussed everywhere.
Yeah, it's AI is indeed a very high profile subject, which is more or less which is discussed in almost any forum or process that with which it has even remote links with. So I am not entirely sure that all parties will agree to consider this subject within the context of the CBD, because the links with the convention and its goals is quite obvious, but there are, how would I say it? There are bigger fish to fry on artificial intelligence. The regulation of artificial intelligence is something which is really urgent, and there are other more appropriate fora and processes to deal with this regulation. So I would anticipate that not all parties would agree to deal with artificial intelligence under the CBD, unless, of course, there is a very strict delimitation of the context within which this can be discussed.
Thank you for that. It's true that we do hear a lot in the CBD that the mandate is very important, and that there's a number of topics that would be relevant to a certain extent within the CBD that are sometimes opposed to in the discussions because they do not fall under the strict biodiversity topic, even if they are very much related to some of the discussions. Again, I wonder if there's more questions from the room, because I feel like I'm taking up all the speaking time now that I'm asking all my questions. So I don't want to prevent people from asking questions, but if there are none, I'm also very happy to close the session and allow people to have more time for other things. But I also want to be mindful of providing an opportunity for questions. So please raise your hand if you have questions. I believe, Hendrik, you've been crystal clear.
Hmm. Yeah, well,
I think maybe we will close the session here then, because I don't see any hands raised. And again, as I've said, the recording from this session will be made available on the Co-op for CBD website for you all to catch up on, or for your colleagues to catch up on, because you won't need to since you're here. And also the slides will be made available. And feel free to sign up for all of the other sessions we have coming up this week. And I hope they will be enlightening for the preparation of Substa. I might see some of you there. Hendrik might see some of you there. So I will say good luck with the preparations and see you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
thank you. Goodbye.
I was muted, but I was saying thank you, Hendrik, of course, for your presentation.
My pleasure.